Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Appreciate if you'd take your seats, reach down, turn off your cell phones. We're going to get started here. It is 1 p.m. on Tuesday. Need my glasses. Tuesday, June 19th, 2018, times 1 p.m. This is a continuation of our deliberation regarding the budget. We have all three commissioners that are present today and a wide variety of elected officials and department heads. Thank you for coming today. Also want to welcome you, those out on the internet who are streaming this. It's a nice tool we have there, but anyway, welcome to our hearings. Kathleen, where are we at?
We are on round two.
Round two.
Round two. Would you like to see where you are at this point, where we left off yesterday? I don't believe we shared this with the group.
Good.
We are sitting at a total deficit of $13,498,120.
Okay, wrap her up.
All righty.
Good to go.
I'll go ahead and make the decisions and we'll be done.
You know, I think that's pretty good because we started out with a $7 million deficit. We've done really well.
So, would you like to change any of these major decisions that you've made right now, such as consideration for property taxes, foregone, or the personnel-wide expenses?
Okay, before we get started into that, I asked Judy to give me a list of some things too that we didn't per se talk about during the presentations, but they are a part of our budget, so we do need to address them. The first, and these all fall in our category under the board of mainly, you know, like we have the Humane Society that in fiscal year 18 was $360,000 a year, and they have a request this year for $385,000 a year, an increase of $25,000. And so I think the board needs to be aware of that, and I guess make a decision on. Have we already made that decision, or?
Earlier you declined, but just to get it on the
Okay. And just to get it on the record, earlier the board had made the decision that we were not going to do an increase on that $25,000. Secondly, we had a request from the Boise Valley Economic Partnership. We had been a member of those a couple years ago. In fiscal year 18, we chose not to renew the membership, but we did have a letter in fiscal year 19 this year asking us to rejoin. That was $15,000. I have down here on the notes 4 discussions. We haven't reached.
Right, that came in after.
Okay, so that's a decision the board needs to make on that one. I think my fellow commissioners are pretty well aware of the circumstances or what they provide, so I'll just go for a vote on this. Jim?
Which one are we talking about?
The Boise Valley Economic Partnership, $15,000.
Yes?
Rick?
No?
For me, it's a no. And my reasoning behind that is that part of that being a member was they were to provide us with monthly, or not monthly, but updated reports and meetings. And that was the reason in fiscal year 18 we ceased doing that, was because they never came and reported to us. They just kind of took the money and run. So.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Tibbs.
Yeah, I wanted to make a comment about my yes vote. I know that this is one of those groups that there isn't a lot of enthusiasm to say a member, but it does bring a lot of the elected officials together, and they do have regular meetings, and even though maybe we would like to give them, or like for them to give us more information, we don't see it all the time. I'm concerned that if we're not at the table, well, that's just less information that we'll hear about. I think that there's an expectation from citizens that we be at the table in a lot of these different committees just so that we can hear what's going on, even though we may not like the group, we may not agree with what they're doing, but for me, I think there's an expectation, and it's not that much money. I mean, we're dealing with a $13 million deficit here, and we're talking about $15,000.
Thank you.
That went well.
Well, you can mark that down as a 2-to-1.
Noted.
The next one, and I want to make some comments on this one because, you know, this one kind of struck a chord personally with me, and that's the funding of the Allenbaugh House. So last year, and I go back a year, first off, I will very adamantly state that, you know, there's drug problems out there and we need to figure out how to deal with it. But last year, we were being pressured by certain members that worked for the city of Boise to commit to funding Allenbaugh House, and that was before we ever got into our budget discussions. So it wasn't before us properly. But then later on, accusations came out that at that time we were accused, the board was accused of trying to, and I don't know if this is a quote or probably maybe some wording that I come up with, but weasel our way out of not funding Allenbaugh House. And this ended up becoming a political issue. Political issue in the respects of a certain individual stating in her campaign for county commissioner that we weren't being responsible in doing that. So essentially we were accused of something that we did not do, because we ended up not only funding our portion of the Allenbaugh House last year, we also ended up agreeing, and I think it was a 2-to-1 vote, but agreeing to their increase at that time. And kind of the old philosophy comes up is, you know, if you're going to be accused of doing something, why don't you just do it? And frankly, I'm at the point when I look at Allenbaugh House where I do believe there is a purpose for Allenbaugh House. And these are all my own personal thoughts, not that of the board. My fellow commissioners can speak on their own behalf. But, you know, when we look at who takes up the services of Allenbaugh House, those services in a report that we get, it's either a couple times a year, it might even be monthly, semi-annually, that it shows that Ada County's use of that from the citizens living in unincorporated Ada County are a very small percentage, whereas the city of Boise's usage of Allenbaugh House is about 92%. Now, I know we've had conversations and discussions, Jim has had conversations with Kate, as I think he testified to earlier, about, you know, is this a benefit for the people who are in jail when they come out of jail of using it? I have no doubt that it is, and I think that's been attested to. But then again, it seems like, according to the reports, the majority of these people live within the city of Boise. So my question that I've been trying to mull over with this is this really something Ada County should be paying for? You know, we're mandated by the Constitution and by state statute that there are certain things that we absolutely have to pay for. And these other things that we end up getting kind of drawn into are because other entities come up with these things that they want to do, but they don't want to pay for it. They want to go and come to us and say, well, we think you ought to pay for it. Well, the only way we can pay for it is by raising taxes. So frankly, I'm kind of on the border whether my vote would be to continue to fund Allenbaugh House or not. That's to the tune that they're asking this year. They asked for an increase of $8,600 for a total of $307,000. You know, the county has a lot of needs, as has been presented here with our budget showing at $13 million in the deficit. We have a lot of needs that we need to take care of that are county needs. It's not some idea that somebody else has come up with and they want help paying for it. And to me, it's programs like this when it comes to, do I fund something that our county departments and elected officials need, or do I fund something that another government entity outside of Ada County needs? So that's going to be a difficult decision for me, because I think that well, I know that there's drug abuse issues out there that need addressed. But frankly, I'm not sure it's Ada County's responsibility to pay for that. So, anybody else want to comment on that?
Sure.
Commissioner Tibbs.
Here we go. Yeah, I take the opposite view. I realize that Commissioner Case's comments that most of the people that use it are from Boise, but most of the people that use all of the county services are from Boise. It's the largest city. That's just natural. And we're already kind of in that arena with the indigent fund. We continue to, I agree with what Commissioner Case is saying, is I don't like getting drawn into these things either. But the reality is that we are. And this is one of those kinds of programs that it really is related more closely than what you think to the indigent fund. I think that we do have a responsibility. And again, the $8,000 isn't that much. I remember Commissioner Izaguirre telling us that there was a time when Ada County backed out of the funding for Allenbaugh House, and the county got crucified. And they finally gave in and said, okay, please forgive us, we'll spend the money. And it went away. You know, I think we have a responsibility to participate in the program. Again, I think that especially as the inmates are released from the Ada County Jail, that they have to have some place to go. And oftentimes it's just, it's Allenbaugh House. So I think we should fund it. I think we should continue funding it. I support the increase.
Okay. Mr. Visser?
I'll get to weigh in. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have been educated on the Allenbaugh House. The funding formula at its inception was based on population, and it still is today. At its inception, the rate that was set for Ada County was based on the population of the entire county and then also the population of unincorporated Ada County. You know, if our percentage matched out, since we were paying the most, we should be receiving more services than Boise City. It's not even close. It's almost a 10-to-1 ratio, and that's unacceptable. Yeah, it's a very good thing, but it's not an efficient, very good thing. I'm pleased with some of the organizations that we have in our community, the Boise Rescue Mission, the Interfaith Sanctuary. I think we could get more for our taxpayers' money if we directed it there. And I was against the increase last year when the state of Idaho decided not to increase its contribution, and I remain against it this year.
Okay.
So just for clarification, are you against the increase and the total funding altogether, or is it just the increase?
I'd have to take a close look at it. I would probably reduce the total funding, take a look at the percentage that Boise's playing. A 10-to-1 ratio is, yeah, as much as we're paying, we're not getting a return on that dollar.
I disagree.
Pull your mic down, Rick.
A 10-to-1 ratio is pretty dispositive. It doesn't show that we're getting a return on our dollar based on the large contribution that we're making and a comparable contribution that the city of Boise is making.
Well, and my purpose for bringing this all up is as we work through this deficit that we need to look at and how we're going to do this is, to me, that is a subject that's still on the table. And, you know, I don't want to sound indifferent to it. Probably my perspective is a little different today than it was maybe a year ago. But you know, I'm calling out the city of Boise on this one for having their employee step up and accuse this board of what they did last year. So take it for what it's worth. I'm gonna, like I said, let's leave that so that we can come back to that if we need to. The next item that I need to discuss is that we forgot to bring up is the rejoining of the Idaho Association of Counties. Last year, we took the unprecedented step of not being members of IAC because of some issues that we felt weren't getting addressed. There's been a lot of changes with IAC over the last year. I'll say me personally, I'm pretty impressed with Seth Gregg coming in as the new director. He's made a lot of good positive changes, and I think that with him in charge moving forward, that it would be probably a good thing for the county to get back involved in that. Although I don't want to take anything away from our people, Lorna, Larry, Erica, all those folks who worked with us and worked with the lobbyists that we hired this last year to move Ada County's issues forward in the legislature. I thought they did an excellent job, and we made a lot of success there. But to me, it would be good having both of them back in. So I would, my vote would be to rejoin the Idaho Association of Counties. That dollar amount is $45,590. Turn it over to my fellow commissioners for their thoughts.
Yeah, there was a significant change in activity by IAC with their new leadership this year, and we look forward to working with them if this is approved. Again, as Chairman Kay said, our lobbyists and our staff did an A-plus job, and putting those two together will help us move even more bills out to the legislature. So I'm in favor of rejoining IAC.
Jim?
Yes.
Okay. 3 yeses. Judy, is there anything else that we needed to address? No? Okay. Okay, Kathleen, let's go back to you and with your initial questions. I guess there's some philosophy here going on. As far as what we do, but ask your questions.
Oh, what? Do you want to go in a certain order? I mean, I didn't know if you wanted to make some changes on the sheet before we went back into personnel. There are a couple of things that you had asked us about that I have information on.
Well, okay, I can start off. We can just go down through these one at a time. And again, I don't see these decisions until we've actually, all of us have come together and said, yeah, that's the budget we want to present. I don't see these thoughts as being written in stone at this point.
Correct.
So the first item before us is the percentage of the base. So I think each one of us had a three-way idea on what we wanted to do. Jim, I think your thought was, yes, take the 3%. Mine was no, and Rick, you abstained on that one. Do we have any different thoughts at this point on the base?
I would probably have a conditional one on the base. I'm okay with going with 3% as long as the foregone taxes. I did not find anything in this budget that raised to a level of high public safety or raised to a level of emergency or emergence. So if the foregone taxes stays at 0, I'm okay with going to 3%.
Okay, and we can, that's another item down on our list, the foregone. So tentatively, it's a yes for you, yes, depending on the foregone. Jim?
Yes.
So plug the 3% in there. I'm still at no for right now, but that's a 2-to-1. So and I'll tell you why. This is no big secret. I think to some of you, others it may be news, but it was pretty obvious to me in this last election that I just went through that people were concerned about their taxes. My opponent, who was successful in her run, pointed out that during the time frame that I'd been in, I had been taking the tax increases, and I had. And my reason for doing that is because of the situation the county was in. We were in dire straits, still are in my opinion. But the county needs a lot of things, including personnel and and buildings. That's pretty obvious. But it was made very clear to me by being removed from office that the public doesn't like their taxes raised. So it's kind of one of those things, you don't like your taxes raised or you do. I mean, you're either going to have good quality service and buildings to do those in, or you're going to be saving tax money. I understand, folks, and having to pay taxes. I don't like to pay them myself. I will state that there has been discussion, and this is probably more, the idea itself surfaced from Commissioner Tibbs, so I'll give him full credit. There was some thought about trying to do a tax relief for, trying to run some legislation to do a tax relief where elderly population at a certain age, that their property taxes would be freezed at that point until their property sold, and then it would be caught up at a later time. I think it's a great idea. When you get with elderly folks on a fixed income, you know, that's an issue that I think our legislature needs to address. So that was Commissioner Tibbs's thoughts and ideas, and I think it's a good thing that hopefully maybe we can convince some folks to pursue. I don't know what that looks like, but the idea at 100,000 feet is a good idea. Anyway, getting back to that, my reasoning, that's why. If you guys, any thoughts you want to share?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Tibbs.
before we start going down through this, I don't, it might be beneficial if I think we need to know where the commissioners stand on the use of foregone. Rick says he's not going to use any foregone. He doesn't see any emergency. He doesn't see any need. So I'm on the other side where I see a lot of emergencies. I see a lot of need for the county in order to provide the service that they're mandated by the state and by state statute and the Constitution. I think we've got to have it. We've managed to kind of scrape along as best we can year after year after year, and this is the one time where we can help the departments out a great deal. I look at the requests for personnel. Yeah, there's a lot, but I didn't see any in there that weren't needed. I didn't really see much of any request that wasn't needed. So I'd like to know if what commissioners are willing to take foregone.
I get a feeling you're calling me out since you already know what Rick's is.
Well, I think it's important because if there's 2 votes that you won't use any foregone whatsoever, that's going to simplify this process in a hurry. It'll be brutal on the budgets, and but I think that we need to know that. I know, again, you know where I stand on it, and if you.
Well, I've had no secret, Jim, on the use of foregone on all the years that I've been here. I don't believe that we should use foregone. That was a different administration's time to use that, and those administrations, and I'll call them out right now, they chose not to. They put the county in the situation it's in right now. It costs on average it costs money in order to continue with your level of service. As our county grows, that level of service grows. So, you know, that's why I'm borderline on the 3%, because to me, that's almost like a maintenance fee. But when it comes to foregone, and I'm not 100% there until we're more into this budget. I mean, we just got started yesterday. But as far as I sit right now today, no, I don't believe we should take foregone. That was another administration's duty to do that, to provide for the county. They chose not to because they wanted to be pictured as the people who don't raise taxes on individuals, but yet the entire county, as far as county government, has suffered because of that. And for me to go up and clean up their mess, I don't know that that's my job to do it. Am I 100% there? It depends on where we get with the rest of this budget. I look at the budget and I'm like you. I see all these personnel requests that come in. We need them. If we want to keep them, if we want to keep up with the level of service that's being asked of us, they're needed. They're especially needed in areas like the coroner's office, the sheriff's office, especially these high areas that the liability is, we have to protect the taxpayers of Idaho from lawsuits. So yes, they're very much needed there. We're at a crisis, folks. The county is at a crisis, whether you want to hear that or not. And the only thing that's going to take care of, you got to have money to pay for it. And if people are not willing, if the public is not willing to pay for it, they send a pretty strong message, because I can guarantee if they don't like your message, you will be just like me and unemployed here in 7 months.
Well, I'm willing to take that chance.
Well, I get it, and it's not for me to decide for you, but today, that's where I'm at. I think there's other areas we can look at. Now, is Kathleen going to like that? Probably not. Is Chris going to like it? Probably not. I understand your positions and I respect them. But we get paid to do a tough job, and this tough job is right now this week. That's where we make our money, so to speak. Rick, did you have any?
Yeah, I can weigh in a little bit on that also. If I were to use foregone, it would probably be for a building project of some type, because you draw it down in this 1 year. For personnel, it's something that you've got to match every subsequent year. But when I was interviewed a couple of months ago by a reporter for the Statesman, I had a comparable thing. People are ticked off about rising property taxes, and I am one of them. And the story that I will tell you is that I have a 92-year-old mother that's a widow, and has been a widow since 1992. I'm not sure what that math is, but she's been on Social Security, and her annuity has run out, and we help her out from time to time. She hasn't had a child in the school system since 1978. So we're looking at 40 years. Her property taxes go up just like the rest of us. And that is unacceptable to me. That law's got to be changed, and that's gonna change our budget here. And we've had calls and we've had emails, and I've had personal run-ins with people that are very upset about the assessments, and they're very sensitive to what their property taxes are, even when they know they're not going to be the same rate as their assessments. I also read and did the research on foregone, and the chairman is right on in that zeal to not raise taxes. They didn't raise taxes, and that's going to catch up with you sooner or later. And it did, and it's been painful before I got here, and it's painful right now. And that's my perspective on it. Thank you, sir.
Chairman?
Yeah, Commissioner Tibbs.
As long as we're going down memory lane, everybody in this room knows that what happened the previous commission, that they used the fund balance, that's one-time money, to fund ongoing expense, and it failed miserably. We got stuck with that. The use of fund balance, and Rick, I don't know if you knew this or not, you get that every year. Right. So even if you use it for personnel, you get that money next year and the year after and the year after. So it is sustainable. And this is an opportunity for us to fix the wrongs from the past. And it's a great opportunity to do it. We've got the money. It's going to be the impact on the taxpayers. You heard the numbers yesterday. What was it, $4.40 per $100,000 of taxable?
Yeah, it's $2.20 per 100,000 of taxable.
$2?
So for the average home, which is 200,000 taxable, it's $4.40.
Is that a year, or is that every 6 months?
That is a year.
For 200,000 for a
Taxable.
home, with 300, it'd be a $300,000.
$300,000 value, yes.
Gee, $8. Wow. That's not very much money.
Well, it depends on how much you're going to take, because it's per every million.
Sure.
And I did a quick figure yesterday, knowing that this topic was going to come up. Depending on the amount we took, I just used, I don't know, what's in the foregone balance, 12 million?
12 million.
So I took the $12 million and I did my own property on what it would cost me a year to do it. It was $118. For some people, $118 a year is not a lot of money. For other people, that's the difference between buying their medicine and buying their food. And, you know, again, as you know, I understand, Jim, what you're talking about. I just, you know, I look at the mandate that came out a month ago.
Well, I'm not talking about using $12 million.
I understand that, but I'm just saying, you know, your perception of what may be a lot of money and not is your perception. Other folks have different views too, so.
Now what?
So let's go, we all had stated the new construction role. We'll get to foregone, that's coming up here in a minute. New construction role, we've all said yes on that. Use of savings, and I know we monkeyed with this a little bit, Kathleen.
This number, actually, we did not monkey with. This is the savings that we have already put in the budget for indigent services, ad valorem, and parks, where they're intentionally using fund balance to support the budget.
Oh, okay. Maybe it was, scroll down a little.
I think we monkeyed with it by changing this additional expense or something. But we can change that number, I mean. But we are good. So as you make decisions, again, up in here, you will be in the green. If you go up to 3.5 million, it'll show a $3.5 million deficit, but you'll be in the green because we feel that you have that fund balance in the general fund that you can use. That's how much we consider that you're good using.
And how much is that?
3.5 million?
Not 4.5?
Not 4.5. 4.5 is a little too high. Remember, I'm very
And is that
conservative.
3.5 plugged in there somewhere?
It's plugged into the calculation, so as you make decisions, it will show 3.5 as a deficit, but you will be in the green, and so your target is to be in the green.
I see.
You want me to show?
Green isn't zero. The green is
Zero.
3.5,
No.
right.
No. You want me to show you how that would,
Yes,
by
please.
just plugging in a number? Can I just plug in a number in here?
Yeah.
That would be another 3.5 off the deficit.
Oh, did I go the wrong way? What happened?
Reloaded on you.
Huh?
It just
Oh.
reloaded.
Well, that's not very nice. Ugh, I put in too much.
You did 70 million.
Did I do 70 million? I'm having problems with, how did I do that? Oh, so that's what it would be if you took 12 million and foregone. That's what we've got. So there you go. 7, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Let's try that. There you go. So this would mean that you will be using almost $3 million of fund balance. You are in the green. We are comfortable with that. That's what that means. If you went to 0, you would be in the yellow. I will take this out now unless you want me to leave it in.
I think we're in the red when we went to 0. Put that at 0. Just to see where we're gonna land. Put your merit at 1.5. And your COLA at 2. We're in the orange.
Yes. But
Good to go.
Huh?
Good to go, right?
Nope.
No?
I'm not going to let you off that easy.
Orange is close to red.
Yeah. It's way close to red.
Gentlemen, where do you want to go?
Well, I'd like to stay with that 3% COLA.
Okay, put it back to 3.
Merit, I don't know if you had a suggestion yesterday, Jim, to drop that down?
Well, the way things are going, I don't even know how we can get a 3% COLA. The way that we're gonna have to cut. So
Well, that's what we'll explore.
put a 0,
0 for the COLA or the merit?
both.
Oops, not 30.
I would hold the COLA at 3%. We've seen things from all the departments on that, but we want to try this for a scenario.
One of the things you have to remember, I think you had people reminded people that we were
Right.
considering the 3%, so they figured that again into their budget, so.
Well, yeah, they put the COLA at 3%. That was part of their instructions.
Should I add it back, or?
And the illustration of that is if a department wanted to give someone a 7% raise, they would give a 4% raise instead because of 3% COLA?
I don't think anybody gave people just raises. It was mostly market or special salary
Right,
adjustments.
that's
They
one
were,
of the
yeah.
SSAs.
Mhm.
Let's go to our B budget.
Certainly.
Did you put a 3 in there?
I can,
Please do.
okay. So we're roughly back where we started at 7 million?
No, we were at 9.
Well, originally where we started, round one at the beginning of round one, but maybe we were at 9, I don't remember.
9951,398.
So, on your CIP recommended, if you want to start here, or your supplementals, there were some things you wanted to go back and look at. I've highlighted those, italicized them and bolded them, so there were 2 on the sheet. And then also we wanted to discuss potentially the facilities master plan. So those 3 are on here, as well as all your prior decisions. Or we can look at the operating supplementals for the departments. I know we need to remove $5,000 from the assessor's budget because you are funding the AIC. So that's on the other sheet that we can make an adjustment for.
What's down at the bottom? Is that figure added in where that's got, I know we talked about this yesterday, but I still wasn't clear. The master facility plan implementation, that 1.25,
That 1.25 was the consideration of moving the coroner's new sites construction down into the facilities master plan.
yeah, but that wouldn't have any effect on the overall dollar.
No, it's just one place or the other. I just had, you
And the only CIP B budget items are those items from 7 through 11, correct?
7 through 11, yes,
And then the 13 through the 16 is the special funds,
correct. Correct,
and that's all of our capital investments?
yes. And these are all included in your numbers that you've been using.
Are we just gonna go through these then and see if it's still a yes, or see if there's a no on any of these?
Well, it depends on what you guys want to do. Do you want to go through, there's our capital improvements right there. If you want to cut any of those, then now's the time. If not, then we have to go through a budget.
Right, question, sir?
Yeah,
Yeah, Kathleen, on the coroner and the solid waste office building being bold and italicized, what's the point of that?
You had asked me to just mark those for further consideration.
But they are calculated in right now because
Yes,
there's a number
yes, and
form.
you originally said yes, but you wanted to come back to those. You wanted to just,
Well, I know the vote yesterday or the day yesterday would be for Monday on the solid waste office building was a 2-to-1. That's 770,000.
but that's an enterprise fund. It's
Oh,
not going to
that's
have an
right.
effect on the overall, correct?
and correct, and this year they're only, even though on the left-hand side in the total project's 770, they're only requesting 70,000 for FY19. So looking at the 19 column,
Yeah, that's an
all of
enterprise
them.
fund that's working well then.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, all of those are funded.
Yeah, those 4 right there, okay.
Are we at an impasse, gentlemen?
I'm good with all of them.
Well, I'm good with all the positions. So I guess we got a budget, right?
No.
And why do you say no?
Because we still are upside down.
How
Further
far?
than I would like to be.
And tell me how far you want to be.
Again, 3.5 million of fund balance, so
And
I
how
don't-
much fund balance do we have?
4. And you can go up to 4, that's fine, but I recommend 3.5. I want to be conservative if something goes south.
You know, I can remember here, I don't know, probably about 6.5, 7 years, well, it was about 6 years ago, I guess, 6 or 6.5 years ago, in a budget meeting where I actually had, well, I didn't, but the board actually had Chris pacing like a tiger across the room telling us we couldn't do that. But it ended
Different
up-
times.
It ended up getting passed. Do you recall that meeting, Chris?
If I might add, Mr. Chairman.
Please do.
When Kathleen's talking about the use of a maximum of 3.5 million of foregone, or not foregone, of savings, it would be allocated to one-time expenses only. It would not be allocated to any ongoing operations.
And I have thoughts on at least 2 million of that and how you,
You know, at that meeting too, I was present as a civilian. Chris was 6'4" and weighed 250. You see what happened to him.
I think the use of your savings.
So, kind of the interpretation that I'm, you know, it takes me a little bit of time, but I'm a little slow. I'm just an old country boy. But kind of the impression I'm getting is that the only way to do this is if we're going to take foregone and all the maximum amount of taxes that there are to take. Is that what I'm hearing?
I don't think necessarily.
We're prepared to go through B budget and personnel, so just awaiting the board's direction.
Well, I'm good with where it's at.
Well,
Mr. Chairman, you have.
Come on up to the mic there, Chris. We want to get you, because there's folks out there on the internet that want to hear you.
Mr. Chairman, Board, I guess you have the conundrum of either having to cut primarily positions. That's where the money is. It's in the personnel budget. It's not really sitting in the operating budget, or levying additional taxes. So that's the option.
Wouldn't you agree, though, that by cutting these positions, that it's going to put the county in a deeper hole with our ability to provide the services we need to provide?
I believe that as clerk of the court and the budget that I produced, I felt it was what we needed to maintain our operations. And as the budget officer and looking at what's been presented by the other elected officials and department heads, I think they brought you a budget that they feel they need to actually catch up. And I don't know that that's going to bring them fully up to cover all the growth and what they need to handle, but to tread water. The challenge is we don't have the money to fund all of that unless the board is willing to raise taxes. You can look at a variety of things, but whether you take the new construction roll or a variation on the 3% or whatnot, it's all gets down to you levy taxes, or do you cut position requests?
I just needed somebody else to say that besides me.
Now, there's a couple of areas where you can do things. You can look at your contingency that you have $1 million for. You could pull $500,000 out of that. I don't know that there's any additional revenues across the county that you can look at that we could look at to increase. So it really gets down to looking and going through those positions one by one, and either if there's groups of them, cutting them, I would not recommend you just say, here, take, let's go 50% or some magic number, but it might be worthwhile to go, if you want to go down that path, is talk to the departments about the relative need for the requests. So you have requests for additional personnel, and you have requests for supplementals. You may want to, maybe you feel that one has greater merit over the other, or maybe your elected officials or department heads may have some thoughts on that.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Tibbs.
Kathleen, is Meg here? Meg Leatherman? Yeah,
She is in the back.
Meg, did you make that change and add that $200,000 to your revenue? Has that been done?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Tibbs, no, but I would be willing to increase my revenue projection by $200,000 if you would, the board would agree to that. That would cover my supplementals pretty much except by $60,000.
Okay, we'll do that.
Thanks, Meg.
Thanks, Meg. See, we just come up with 200,000.
We're using Ada County money for that. We print our own money now.
So, one of the questions you had asked yesterday was regarding whether indigent services would be willing to take on the cost of either Allenbaugh House or Housing First. So I'm talking to the clerk and in thinking about it and talking to the prosecutor more on New Path, that we could go ahead and move that $250,000 for Housing First off of the general fund, put it into indigent services and have it funded with one-time fund balance, and then give the, we have the additional $200,000 from the hospitals that we would also put in there, but that would give you another $200,000 in the general fund, because we're moving it off the general fund, putting it into indigent services and funding it with fund balance rather than property taxes or revenue.
Well, I think that's probably a good idea.
250,000, yeah. So,
I mean, that's essentially, that's where the money should be spent anyway. It's for indigent folks, homeless folks.
well, and their metrics are associated with how that's going to affect that fund, so everyone is comfortable with that.
Okay, can we make that change too? Gentlemen, you all right with that?
Yep. Okay.
Okay, so there's what, 450 we've come
450.
up with?
I don't know beyond that.
Well,
Did you want to say something?
Phil, are you looking anxious there to jump up here to the mic? Sure. Come on up.
I think the short of it, Mr. Chairman, is you can't spend money you don't have. Right, and so we have it set up this.
I've seen other people do it.
You've seen people try, and you've seen us push back similarly with those people as well. Right? Hence the
You and I can agree
going
to
back and
disagree
forth.
on that comment, but I've
That's
seen
fair.
it happen.
5.5 million or something.
In terms of it today, we did lay it out so that you can review all of the supplementals, regardless of the type, as well as the CIP projects. That's the most sensible place to begin. In terms of the prioritization that you asked back in February of the departments put their highest priorities in their base budgets, first and foremost. So those supplementals are those things that go above and beyond what is allocated in that base budget, including that 2% that we gave for operating expenses. So my advice to you at this point is to wade through there. Either there needs to become some consensus as it relates to the revenue, or going through each of those. Kathleen has it set up so it's ready to go through each item. I recognize from what you've already communicated that you see the strong need for many of these things. I think now is the difficult task of prioritizing what you want to do as it relates to these. The unfortunate burden is upon you guys as the commissioners to make those priority judgments when it's between and among various departments in the county. So we're set to help you walk through that and wade through that. I recognize the difficult task that you presented, Mr. Chairman, but needless to say, that is our next step at this point, is either to raise revenue or reduce expenses.
Commissioner Visser.
Yeah, and what I recall from last year, I believe we went through everything again, Budget A and Budget B, and made adjustments to get to the orange ground, or green ground. Green ground last year, right. So I'm fine with doing that.
That is typical for us to have to go through this multiple times, correct?
You know, and that's fine. Obviously, that's one of our options. I'll reiterate that I don't think there's, I don't think anybody has fluffed anything here. I think that all the positions that have been requested are in dire need. You know, we have asked, and when I say we, for the first 5 years, 6 years, I don't know, you've been here a year, so
2 years.
2 years. Damn.
Second budget. Yeah, I know.
Well, first 5 years, 4 years, okay. Jim and I, we came in and just like we did, well, the first couple of years, we came in and said flat budget for everybody. You know, we have ground we have to make up. You're going to have to just dig in and help out here. And you know, our employees did that. They knuckled down. They suffered through a couple of years of completely flat budgets. Even though our population was rising, all of our expenses were going up. They did what we asked them to, and because of that, again, you know, we were trying to make up for this huge deficit we were left in. Took that administration, which would have been Jim and Rick Isaguirre and myself, took us 5 years to climb out of the hole that we were left in by basically turning that to our employees and saying, no increases. We have to dig out of this hole. We did that. Now it comes the time where it's time that we have to look at these positions, and we've got to get to a point where we're helping people. We can't have a jail that houses over 1,100 people be short on jailing staff. They have to come in and they have to ask for overtime money because they don't have enough people to run the jail, so they have to bring him on overtime. That's a double bad thing because now you've got really tired people doing a lot of work. You know, you look at IT, we put more stuff, not just the board, but the entire county, our other elected officials, all of our department heads are going to IT and saying, I need these things to do my job. They need more people to get those done. Paramedics, they got to have, our population is growing, they're responding to more calls, they got to have more people. So to me, there's not a one position in here that's been asked for that I can say is not needed. The other part is, and I said it earlier, you got the public out there screaming at us for raising taxes. You can't have both. If you want the service, you got to pay the taxes. You know, I get it. You would think that somebody in my position would say, yeah, I don't care. I don't care what the public wants. I'm going to go ahead and raise all the taxes I want. That's not my personality. I listen to the people out there that said, you know, but then again, I listen to my people here too. These are good folks. They do a hard job. It is a very tough position to be in. Frankly, I don't know where to go.
It's an unenviable position that you're in, that is certain.
Yeah.
And I think you are now, as you've eloquently put it, you're not deciding between fluff and non-fluff. You're having to make tough decisions between needed things.
Well, I don't know. I guess we could go through, we could ask the department heads or elected officials if there's one position, start off with one that they could do without, pick their lowest priority, go through, cut that. We could take a look at you know, as I think Chris said, we're looking at ongoing expenses, so it's personnel that we need to look at cutting. I don't know if you guys, that's what you want to do.
Well, we're going to have to. I mean, if we're at the point where we're not going to consider using foregone, we're going to have to cut positions. I don't want to do that. I agree with what Dave is saying. I wholeheartedly, and thank you, Dave.
Dilly.
There is, and I don't think about using foregone or raising taxes. I don't take that lightly. I don't want to do it, but we took an oath. We have to provide the service. We have to provide the funding for all the other departments to do what they have to do by law. It's pretty simple to me. We need the foregone to do what we have to do. It's that simple. It isn't It isn't, you know, I understand the arguments for saving the taxpayer dollars. The county didn't take that 3% for so many years. And now it's time, we really need it. And quite frankly, I think the public would support us on continuing to provide the excellent service that the county's providing now. I just think you have to have it.
Rick?
Well, I'll weigh in again.
Okay.
Yeah, even a no vote, I believe we do need these personnel positions, maybe not all of them, but there are alternatives. And the one I got on the phone with last night and this morning was the 8 nurses out at the jail. The number that struck me yesterday is that they already have 19 with a population of 1,100 inmates. Canyon County, do you know how many nurses they have? 2. And they use the rest with medical assistants, physician's assistants. So there's an alternative at a much lesser cost. I don't think you need RNs to do all those things that are said, particularly in light of that 19 number figure. And then 3 counties, Bonneville, Kootenai, and Twin Falls, all contract out those services. And the sheriff in Kootenai County said the services are excellent. The commissioner in Twin Falls said it is a significant savings for our county to contract out those medical services. And what's provided by those medical services? Medical, mental health, dental, and prescriptions. So it's pretty good coverage. And I have the name of some of these organizations, and I'm willing to look into that and see how that alternative would work. There are alternatives. And to me, that's a fine illustration of it.
Okay, thank you.
So what are we going to do?
Mr. Chairman, do you want to start, as you alluded, go through some of the budgets?
Well, you know,
have Kathleen walk through.
why don't we pull them up?
Okay.
And take a look at it. As we pull them up, you know, I'll call individual either departments or elected officials up to the podium. They can answer the question. You know, is there a position in there that you can, you know, absolutely. I mean, again, we recognize you need them, but is there one there that maybe is a little lower on the priority? If that's the case, you know, just tell us which one it is. But if it's not the case, and you know, your argument is, you know, there's all of them I put in for, I absolutely have to have. That's an answer too. I'm not going to browbeat you to death on coming up with giving up some stuff, but we need to, I guess, lack of a better word, prioritize these.
Yep.
So, why don't we pull up the A?
Just want to go through in order, or because I'm standing here, I'm happy to bring up the clerk's office if that would make your life easier.
No, we can bring up the clerk's office since you're up there.
Here are the new positions for the clerk. This is the supplemental new position.
Yes.
Here, I'm going to turn it over to Kathleen initially so I get the facts straight.
Okay.
So what we did for your viewing pleasure is we removed all of the requests that were within budget, so you just have in front of you those that are supplemental requests.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good way to do it.
Yeah, and you know, and I'm assuming just by this little screenshot here that's just on all new positions, correct? It's not any of the other stuff that we dealt with.
You know, it could be special salary adjustments or market. It just depends on what they put in.
So to me, and I'll get confirmation here, but to me, I think what we need to look at initially on this pass through is just the new positions, not any special salary adjustments or
Okay,
or
well, I think it's easy
reclasses or-
enough to get those. to get to
Dollar-wise,
those.
that makes perfect sense
Yeah.
as well, in terms of where you're going to have the maximum impact. So you can see in terms of the new positions, within the clerk's office, there are, now I'm going to get the number wrong, there are 8 new positions for court clerks, as well as in the general, that's in the district court fund, as well as in the general fund, there is 1 new position as a recording clerk. Already knowing what your question is, I do, it's a matter of priority, but recognizing the pain that you've expressed, I do believe that we could reduce. It'll limit our ability and our responsiveness, but it's one of those that we're already doing it. So we could reduce a couple of those positions, and I think it would be, considering where we are in the budget, we recognize our responsibility to the taxpayers as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so what are we looking at, 1 or 2?
Let's do 2 of the court clerk positions.
The court clerk,
Court clerk 2 is
2?
what, yeah.
and okay,
I will emphasize the recording clerk position, which is in the general fund, is a necessity. And it will be covered by the revenue that that division brings in.
Thank you.
okay.
Kathleen, you want to take over?
You're doing so well.
Fine.
So going back up to the top and looking at the new positions for weed.
Okay, Adam, are you there? Come on up. Talk to us a little bit about what's going on there.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thanks for allowing me to speak about the new positions requested in weed control. First of all, the position for the division coordinator, I would find that as the highest priority in weed control. I need somebody there that can maximize the efficiency of our field operations with hands-on leadership. The field technician 2 position, I was requesting that position because I believe that we can actually provide the revenue for that position in enterprise services. So I was hoping to be able to pay for that position by the production that that position provides. So if I was to give up one position, however, it would be the field tech 2 position, because I believe that maximizing the efficiency of the weed control department would be the primary priority of the weed control coordinator, which is, I believe, our highest priority.
Okay, so let me ask you this. If I understand what you just said, you're feeling that the weed tech position would pay for itself
That is in 1 or 2 years, yes.
in 1 or 2 years, but not this year?
It depends on the person. You know, if we can hire somebody that has the experience that we need, usually we can fund that position at 80 to 90% with a good person. However, sometimes because of the nature of our operations, we have to provide the training, and sometimes that comes in at 60 to 70%.
Okay, and so the money you say would fund for itself is coming in off of revenue that they would make on applications?
Yes, sir. Providing services to, weed control services.
Okay, did you put any kind of revenue in your budget to offset that?
We did not.
Do you think that they would bring in revenue in 2019?
I do.
Did you have an estimate on what you think it might be?
My estimate just off of the cuff would be in that, around that $40,000 range.
In the first year in 19?
Yes.
So can we add that into the revenue side?
Yes.
40,000?
Yes.
Well, I would say we keep that in there and
I agree with that.
then offset it with the revenue. Right?
Yes.
Okay, well, we gained 40,000 there. Thanks.
Oh, thank you.
We're not gonna take anything from you, but we did get 40 grand.
Thanks.
We're gonna nickel and dime everybody to death till we can come up with about $9 million.
Next
Okay.
excuse me.
Go ahead.
Next position is in the appraisal division for the assessor's office. And they just have one position between appraisal and land records.
Mr. Chairman, there are 2 points I would like to make in defense of keeping this position. The first point is last year we had asked for 2 appraisal techs, and we were one of the few offices that was willing to give up one of those positions, so you only funded 1 last year. We're asking for that to be funded this year. The second point I would like to make, we had over 4,500 new homes in Ada County last year. And it's extremely difficult to keep up with that. And if we fall behind, I don't know how we would ever catch up in this market.
Yeah,
So I would ask that that position be left in.
Yeah, Bob, I'm not gonna nickel and dime you. You're extremely conservative and you do a great job and you've added a whole bunch more. I think that we don't need to touch that one. How about you guys?
that's having just one position that is so needed and so essential to the operation of the county. I thank you for being so fiscal conservative, but I support that position wholly.
All right. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners.
We have 2 new positions for the trial court administrator's office. The reason they're italicized there is you did want to come back and review these, so I will turn it over to Larry.
Hi, Larry.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. In evaluating the 2 positions pursuant to your direction, the priority will be the home visitor. That is the position that has the most direct impact on the public, doing home visits for the needy and the disabled folks. It's a critical position for public service. The administrative specialist position for juvenile, I'm confident that working with the trial court administrator's office and the clerk's office, that we can come up with a recommendation on how to cover those service needs for that position.
Okay, so your home visitor, is that the first position or the second?
Second one.
They're both entitled administrative
It's,
specialists.
they're entitled the same, but the visitor position is not in the system, so we labeled it the same.
Okay.
So 105 and 107, last 3 numbers on the position, does that help?
Yes, it's the second one.
That's the one you want to keep.
Yes,
So we're going to eliminate 105.
yes.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you,
Thank
Larry.
you.
Oops, well. Done the clerk, we've done the auditor. Are you up for the sheriff?
We get the auditor?
Yes, we did, the auditor. That was the one new position for records.
Oh.
That will be bringing in revenue.
Okay.
Can you just scan quickly up to the clerk again so I can get those numbers?
Sure.
Great, got them. Thank you.
Okay.
The sheriff has, I believe, 39 new positions. 39 new positions.
Only asking for one at this point, Sheriff. I know.
I added division numbers, so hopefully that helps you out.
I have my
You
sheet
have a
with
sheet?
me.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioners, thanks for your time. We've looked over it pretty extensively. The only one that we would, we'd have to take on some additional burden to supplement it, but I would look at a way to give up the, I guess the PCN is 945, the sergeant supervisor for the training division, although that would put quite a burden on our training lieutenant, but we would evaluate that as we move forward. But that's a pretty good savings there.
945 is the last 3.
Looks like
Probably not seeing it here. Can I just,
on my PCN,
yeah, it's, we just need to scroll it here. What you said, training?
correct.
What division is that?
Down at the bottom.
More. There we go, last one.
Last one. That one. Correct?
Yep.
Is that the
I think
940?
they're listed in level of priority.
Police sergeant?
All of your positions are listed in level of priority, aren't they? Or are they?
They are listed in,
That was a
they are
question.
listed in division order, and then priority by division probably.
Okay. Okay.
Do you want me to put a no there?
Yeah.
A no there?
Thank you, Sheriff.
We have the prosecutor. I believe there are 9 new positions. Out to the side, I've listed whether they're felony
Jan, where's Jan?
team. I can't remember what the PH.
Oh, that's all right. No, you're fine. I wish I could say yes. Last year, I certainly did. I cut my request in half, and we really did pay the price for it. you know, I'm going to take the chairman to his word that if we really need the positions to stand tall on that, and I'm asking you to fund my positions. I wouldn't have asked for them if I wasn't, you know, 100% behind each and every one of them. You know, I did list them in order of priority, but even in looking at the investigator position at the very end, which is, you know, kind of was our last priority, I just don't know how they're going to survive if they don't have an extra person. I mean, so bottom line is, I understand where you're at. I know it's difficult. I'm asking to be funded at what I've requested.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, we have juvenile, and I believe just one new position for juvenile in the medical unit.
Yeah, and I gotta tell you, I'm not sure that we can cut that one based upon the information that had been put forward. You have 3 medical attendants, and the problem is that if somebody is sick or goes on vacation, there's just nobody to cover.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have 3 medical attendants and 1 nurse supervisor to cover those shifts. Are you just asking about new positions? That is our only position that we're asking for.
Well, if you can come up with something else, that's great too. I'll take any money I can get
This time.
at this point.
I'm not offering it this time, sir.
You're gonna wait for us to go through the next round?
I will. Call me up at that time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, moving forward, we have operations. They have 5 new positions.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, good afternoon. I don't believe we have any positions in here that we can do without or wouldn't have asked for them to start with. But if I do need to give one up, they were put in order. But at this time, I would prefer to give up the painter than the HVAC mechanic for the jail.
Well, where's Ken? He's not gonna like you for saying that.
I understand he's not gonna like it at all, but we've gotten along this long without it. We'll contract. We do have to have another person come in when they work in the public safety building or the other. We do have to have other staff that come in and cover that to get them in and out and make sure they stay where they're supposed to stay due to security requirements.
Well, before we make this decision, did he finish up in our office upstairs? Okay.
Make sure your office gets taken care of.
Okay, thanks, Scott.
Okay, thank you.
Take the painter.
Information technology,
Steve?
11 new positions. Yep, they're all on the screen.
Chairman, Board. Well, we sort of anticipated this. I'd iterate what Scott just said, that as one of the only 2 real service organizations the board has for the rest of the county, we don't put up heads that we don't need. But we did rank them, thinking this might happen, and I believe Kathleen, who's ever putting the nose up there, we're looking at 1300100. Enterprise. It's the
last one.
It's the last one, network specialist. That is the only one that isn't project delivery related or enterprise network security related, or doesn't develop directly. That is a twin position. We only have one of those out there. And we were trying to diversify the number of platforms the gentleman who's been operating does. So we'll cut back from that because arguably all of these run the risk of some sort of impact. But I think that one is probably the one that is the least noticeable to the rest of the folks in county.
Okay, let me ask this question. I know you and I talked about this a little bit. The 2 GIS development, 2.
So one of those, we want to change that. It's listed as a GIS developer 2, but it's not going to be called that. The position doesn't exist. We're actually looking to make them an application administrator, but we don't have a GIS application administrator to select when we pitch these positions. So even though it looks like two of the same, it's actually not, but the pay scale is similar. So one is a new developer, the other one is,
It's not a reclassification or a salary adjustment, it's actually a new position?
yes, sir.
Okay.
It's a scaled headcount, yep.
Okay, so the 1300100,
Correct.
take that off. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you coming up.
Development Services, all their new positions, I believe, are covered with revenue at this point.
Yeah, and you loaded the 200
We did.
additional revenue. You're good, Megan. Thank you.
Then we just have the 4 new positions for the Public Defender's Office.
Well, Steve?
Well, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, we prioritized them yesterday and said that our lowest priority would be that entry-level person. Our top priority, of course, is the one that we're going to dedicate to mental health court, or not mental health court, but to the mental commitment hearings. Commissioner Visser yesterday asked me about the public defender grant because we're a little unique, the fact that we do get that money from the state to use for training, and we also we do have some people that are on that grant. We do have some attorneys now that we hired are on that grant. Of course, our big fear with that is if you do cut us and we have to decide, do we go ahead and hire somebody using the grant money with the fear that one of these years the state legislature will say, no, thank you, and we'll all of a sudden have to decide what to do. We've had discussion with them. You understand that's our quandary, why we're always a little concerned that. But if we have to give a one position, it'd be for that very bottom new entry attorney. But I said with the caveat, the prosecutor just said she needs her people. Of course, when they add people, we have to cover those courts too. And if more courts get added. So we'd love to have our 4. If we have to cut one there, we'd do it. And if we decide to hire somebody in the public defense grant, we'll be visiting with you and letting you know we do that, because that's always one of our fears is if we have to come to you in the future and go, we just lost our money, will you give us money to cover this person? So we understand the budget quandary you're in, but that's our position. We take that bottom one, we'd make it work.
Okay. I'm not so sure that we should be cutting in the public defender when we have this ACL lawsuit pending out there. It's just, I don't think that's a good business decision. So, you guys all right with that?
Yep.
Just leaving it whole?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Tell Tony he dodged a bullet.
Would you like to see where you are?
Yes, please.
Six and a half.
You said you're good with 3.5.
Yes.
4?
No.
Come on,
Sorry.
everybody else has been given a little.
I know, and I feel bad, but. There are probably minimal costs in the operating budget for those positions that you did cut, but they're gonna be minimal and they're gonna take us some time to find. I can't imagine that it's gonna add up to a whole lot of dollars. But I don't know if Anthony's been able to get those. I think he's working on it. And in the meantime, if you don't mind, I'm gonna go back before we forget, because I believe we want to remove this $5,000 for the assessor because you are doing so.
Yes.
Okay. Take care of that. Took care of the other things that we were talking about. So you want to take a break?
Yeah, let's take a 15-minute break.
That way we can get everything updated and
Yeah.
show you exactly where we are.
We'll come back on the record at 2:35. Thank you. Commissioner Visser, would you like to join us? Okay, so before we kind of get going, some thoughts were brought to my attention to discuss. So this is basically a question directed towards the board. The thought of reducing our contingency fund down to 500,000. Looking at what we spent so far this year, we haven't gotten close to that $1 million we had there, even with our thoughts of the what repairs we might have. So that is one area. I've got about 3 different areas. Steve, there's something wrong with this tinny thing? So there were 3 different areas to talk about. So the 500, reducing that down to 500,000, that gives us an extra 500. We did have in there the upgrades regarding doing all of the courts that was put in. If we just did that first half, that's another 456,000 something. I'm just kind of rounding figures. So we could take those out and do that kind of over the extended time. I know we had a concern of wanting to get them all done at once, but when we're short money, we might have to do that. The other thing that I want to bring up for discussion is if you could, Kathleen, pull up the CIP. I think that's where it's at.
Yes.
Yeah. I think what we need to do, and this is a suggestion, also obviously get direction from the board, is that corner, the new site construction, I think that needs to go into the master facilities plan. And, we could move that 1.25 into the master facilities plan, and the research or the investigation or whatever you want to call it is that in bonding for a coroner's facility, we have to have that connected to the sheriff's facility in order to bond for it. So if we move that in the master facilities plan and then look at, in the future, obviously, looking to do a bond, kind of a criminal justice or a law enforcement or safety bond, you could combine those two. That cuts us down to, that 1.25. Those were the 3 areas that I wanted to bring up and suggest to the board. Hear your guys' thoughts. Rick, go ahead.
Well, I'd like to have Kathleen and our Phil review those 3 suggestions just to go over the numbers on that. For instance, the last one, if we're shifting on the coroner building, is it not funded this year, but we have to fund it next year then? Is that what I'm getting out of that? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would not be funded this year, but it would be moved into the master facilities plan to be able to go out on a bond for it along with the sheriff's needs. You can't bond the coroner's office alone. And, you're probably looking at a coroner's office, I'm guessing, about $20 million or higher to build the coroner's office. You're not going to be able to do that unless you just go to a cash savings over multiple years. You're not going to be able to build that unless you bond for it. In order to bond, it has to be tied to the law enforcement. So, it's like if
That's how it was done for this courthouse.
I don't know how.
Yes,
No.
courthouses can be bond, yeah, but we didn't bond for it.
Yeah, courthouse was funded through a private-public
Partnership.
partnership.
Creative financing.
Yes.
In lieu of a bond.
So to answer your question, yeah, it would come off this year's, it wouldn't be funded this year's, but it would go into next year's master facility, possibly with a bonding.
Well, then a little question. I've talked with judges, and I suggested the idea of putting the new courtroom over at the law enforcement building, and if we link the coroner in with that. And I don't know how many people saw that in the last few days, 2 deputies were murdered by an inmate being transferred. But the judges have expressed that concern with the transports. And during my campaign 2 years ago, I talked with the sheriff, and we went over that possibility of some multi-use building over there. And if we aren't transporting inmates and we aren't smoothly doing or scheduling certain other things, I would be willing to entertain a bond on a multifunctional building over there at the public safety building area.
Yeah.
Exploring creative options, yeah.
Obviously, a lot of different moving parts there, but I mean, you have to involve the courts and the.
But I remember the old days when they had judges out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts? Okay, Jim?
Yeah, I agree with your comments, Mr. Chairman. I think that we could move the coroners, should move the coroners to the master facilities plan. As far as the courthouse goes, I'd still like to have the courthouse here. I think eventually, when we get to that point where we're designing if there's a new complex out at Barrister for the sheriff and the coroner, I think that would be a good time to think about like a smaller courtroom for arraignments. I know that worked really well a long time ago. But I still think we need to have that main big courtroom here.
So is that a bigger, different courtroom than anything we have now? Or is it just an additional courtroom similar to what we have now?
Different size courtrooms. There's hearing rooms, there's jury courtrooms. This, as I understand it, is going to be a full jury, 12 jury courtroom.
Okay. Is that right, Larry, if you're still out there?
Correct, it's a 12-person jury courtroom.
Okay. And our current 6 jury courtrooms cannot be remodeled to 12?
Correct.
Well, that was a quick answer.
Okay, as I eat my cookie, sorry I didn't have a lot of opportunity. We're okay with moving 500 out of contingency?
Yes.
Rick?
That's all right, Phil and Kathleen?
Kathleen?
Did we go up last year?
Yeah, we
That's
did
what I thought
because
we
we thought
did.
we'd have all these expenses.
Yeah, so I'm okay with that, yes.
Mommy, is it okay to move it?
Not quite that.
I'm kidding, Kathleen.
And then
Sorry.
I'll get to the, after we do this, to have another discussion on the master facilities plan. So we move that 1.25 out of the CIP.
I'm just
No.
going to say no to that.
That's correct.
And I'm assuming when you say just move it out and put it in the master plan, you're not wanting to budget at all for it. Is that correct? You want it just part of the master plan, and that decision will be made next year?
Yes.
So I will remove this as well, so there's no confusion.
Okay. And then if we could go to the courtroom upgrades and the 475.6, yeah, that one. If we could take that out, you guys are all right with that too?
Well, in a discussion the other day, and Scott maybe weighed in on this, Scott Williams, did it cost less to do it all at once versus doing it in a 2-year project? Do the 2 years added up, does that exceed the cost of doing it at once?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, yes, it does exceed the cost of it now. The other thing by doing it in 1 year, as was pointed out by the chairman, is that we are very sure we will get the same operating systems and the same computers, the same everything to operate it, and they'll all talk together. We spread it out. We don't know what kind of changes we're gonna run into. We'll do the best we can to keep all the equipment the same, but that doesn't mean that the versions of the software on that equipment is gonna be the same.
Right, I remember that now, so.
By my figures, it's looks like about a $30,000 difference or.
It's not a huge difference spreading it out over the 3 years. The difference is gonna be, will we have a unified system that IT can take care of and maintain on a laptop, and they all talk to each other? That's always the chance that you take by spreading out anything that has to do with computers.
The savings would be how much, Mr. Chairman?
About 30,000.
Well, I'll see how you vote on it. I'll abstain for a bit.
Okay, abstaining, where are you at?
Well, I'd like to do them all at the same time, but we're looking for ways to save some money for this next year's budget. So I would go along with, I think we're talking about 1A. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
1A, yeah.
Splitting it in half.
We're just doing one.
Just doing that,
One.
yeah, the 252,000, it's 6 courtrooms.
Okay, so cutting a whole 475,600, is that,
Yeah,
okay. Wow. Yeah, I'd soon just do it the same, and I'm gonna stay there for right now. That seems important to me.
okay, well, I'm for cutting it and just doing the 6 courtrooms, so. Did you say cut it?
Yes, yes, I did.
Okay,
I'm
so let's
sure
do a no there.
All right, thank you.
But thanks for the information, Scott. Okay, let's go back to our big number.
The grand total number, this one?
Getting closer.
I go down to the bottom, Kathleen, and zero out that additional expenses.
This, oh. There you go.
Did you say you was good with 4?
No,
Preferably 3?
4, by the way.
Chris, am I missing something here?
Somebody's gotta do some math for me. How far off we, Anthony?
1,700,000, well, yeah, 1,200,000, 1,200,000.
1.3 seems to be the consensus.
1.3?
Make me look bad.
So we need to come up with 500,000, 400,000, 600,000.
No, 1.3.
3. Oh, I'm sorry. Huh.
Did you used to sell cars?
Pretty much done it all, I think. Well, get your cursor out of that foregone.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Tibbs.
a quick question. With the nurses for the jail, is that, are we at fully funding that at this point, or is that half now and half later?
No, we were at fully funding.
Funding.
Okay.
Well, Larry, we may have to get rid of your courtroom. Boy, that just dead silence. Oh, where are we at?
Mr. Chairman?
Chris?
When you mention the additional courtroom, that might be one where it'd be a good discussion to have for the use of foregone. And you could have a hearing especially for the courtroom. And should the public and your feeling after that meeting be positive, you can support it. If not, at that time you could remove it.
Good point. I just don't know that I'm there yet, but.
And I'm not. But a good point.
Where would you like to go?
Well, why don't you, I just had a thought. Scroll up to where, no, I mean, sorry, down.
Down?
Yeah. A little more. Okay, stop there. $1.7, huh?
1.3.
I'm glad you're there to keep me in check. Well, I'll throw this out there just for discussion purposes, not saying I'm leaning one way or another. If we do go out for an RFP on the banking services, we need that consultant in there, but if that can be postponed for another year, that's 110. I would say the same for that consultant on the 457, that's 60,000. And our lobbyist is 65,000. That's about a little over 200,000, 230.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Tibbs.
If you're thinking about that, I'd like to hear from Cassie to see what kind of an impact that would have, as well as who would speak on the banking services.
Well, the impact is that we just wouldn't do it. It'd go one other year, but there's no doubt. I'll speak for Cassie for a minute, but you can come up. There's no doubt that they do need the consultants if we proceed forward with those. They have to have them. If we can postpone that for a year, we don't have to have them, the consultants. So that's what it comes down to. Do we postpone it for a year or do we proceed with it?
Well, that was just my question was that, are we under a contract that expires or for the 457?
Chairman and Commissioner Tibbs, the contract, it does expire at the end of the year. It can be renewed. The county does not pay any funds for the contract. All of the funding that's paid is through the accounts that are held with Empower. So it's not required that we go out for a contract. We don't have to go out for RFP. We could renew another contract with them.
Thank you. Well, we could throw out.
The what?
Let's go ahead and at least, well, I support it. Yeah, if you want to, we're looking for money to save that, the lobbyists, the banking services, and the 457, they could go.
Rick, where you at?
Well, I'm still not convinced that 8 nurses is what we need. So until that comes up, I'm not going to make any additional changes.
Okay, we'll get to that here in a minute. But for the currently on those 3, why don't you put a no for right now? Can we scroll up? You know, I think we've addressed the big ticket items. I mean, other than getting into things that we can't really delete or touch, yeah. So where are we at?
I good, Anthony?
Hey, I see green.
No, 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 no. It's
Come on,
it's not
it's
green,
green.
green. It's not the green that I want to see. There's various shades of green, so.
Oh. So you need another, what, 100,000?
$500,000.
$500,000.
By a show of hands, who would like the new payroll system?
Oh, I won't be here, I'm sorry.
I was just trying to fill in some space there.
I saw a lot of hands down.
They probably thought it was a trick question.
Chris is pacing. What's your concern, Chris? Come up here.
No, dollar-wise, we're still about $1 million off, aren't we?
$500,000.
To what, 3.5 or 4 million?
3.5.
3.5.
Getting closer.
I see green.
I think you're colorblind.
And Mr. Chairman,
Yes, I'm sorry, Commissioner Tibbs.
It's like being in my house, just being ignored all the time. That, and I know that we're gonna continue discussing this, but I again, about the use of foregone, I have to tell you that for me, that using the foregone for a courtroom, and we could do all of the courtroom upgrades. That would be an ideal use. I think it could be easily proven to the public that something like that is needed. It would get us to where we need to be. We've made a lot of cuts. And again, I think we need to use some foregone before it's forever gone. And that time's coming. And again, that we keep getting that year after year, but I think that's an ideal use for it. So, when we get to that point.
Gee, I hadn't heard that before.
You know, I could go for $4 million easy.
Wow.
Mr. Chairman?
Is that Phil?
Yep.
Come on up, Phil.
I believe we're too painfully close for me not to at least suggest it, although I do it with great trepidation because Commissioner Tibbs referenced it. The payroll system, so we had numerous conversations yesterday afternoon with Steve O'Mara regarding the payroll system estimate, right? So $2 million of that is for the system itself. The other remainder is for the implementation and those costs. One of the challenges, as you know, we just recently signed a contract for the consulting services to help us acquire the new payroll system. There's multiple approaches on how this could be. The one challenge with the estimate and the budget number that you have there is that it is an estimate of what this cost will be. And it would depend on whether we buy the software outright or we pay for software as a service, which currently, talking with Steve, is more likely the outcome that would be. If it is software as a service, it will cost us more in the long run, but will cost us less in the short run.
I think one of the things we should contemplate, and I'm not ready to say it here, but we could look at reducing that number depending on, I would want to consult further with Steve to figure out what would be appropriate, but it may save a few $100,000 as it relates to it and us talking. I mean, part of it, you've been cutting and it's been difficult. We either need to increase the revenue as I laid out earlier or cut expenses, but that's one of those ones that is less certain compared to some of the other budgets that are there. It's always a risk. There is risk in this because the risk is, and the risk exists currently anyways, that the cost of the system is more than $2 million or more than whatever we determine it to be. But we can navigate that risk in the future. I would ask if you want to consider that we take time to evaluate it today rather than just make a quick reaction, but it's something that I'll at least throw out on the table.
How much was that system, did it cost?
It's right now at
2.25.
2.2, yeah, 2.25 million, 2 million for the system.
And that's to purchase it outright?
That's what it was based off. It was an educated guess based on information we researched, right? But that's why we hired a consultant, because the size of employer we are, the number of employees, this is not one of those that's easy to nail down. Plus, we are at a fork where it will either be, do we do it in-house, do we buy third-party software that we install, or do we do it as software as a service? So we've largely ruled out doing it in-house, but the other two, there's a big variance in next year's costs between the two approaches.
Okay. Can you give me 500,000?
Can you give me time to consult with the
can.
IT director? All right.
In fact, we can take a break right now and come back tomorrow.
We're happy to sit down and spend some time to look at this and see if we can't reach out to the consultants as well.
Okay. Thanks, Phil. Appreciate the information. Kathleen?
Commissioner Chairman Case? What would you like me to do?
Gentlemen, what else to discuss? Do we need to take a break and kind of go through what we've done and maybe get some updated sheets and look at these and come back tomorrow, or is there other things that you want to discuss?
I'm in favor of that, unless there's something that should be added on right now.
I can't think of anything. I want time. I'd like some time to look through to see. If you print off those sheets for us again, are you going to show the ones that we cut?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll update the operating supplementals as well. Anthony just did that through his tool. I didn't update this. I'll update this
Okay.
for you. And then, of course, the personnel supplementals already show those out.
Yeah.
I'll just print that off that way.
That would be great. I think I need to look over and see what we've done and then kind of contemplate where we need to go. Okay. Yeah, you guys all right with that, Jim?
I think we ought to stay in this room until we pass the budget.
Well, you're going to be a very lonely man.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm used to it.
I would say we're going to recess until what time are we here tomorrow?
1 p.m.
1 p.m. We'll be in recess for the budget discussion until 1 p.m. tomorrow. Thank you all. Appreciate it. All you're doing. Hang in there. We'll get through this.